In the endless flow of time, history is often written by the victors, by kings on thrones, or by illustrious generals. But sometimes, history chooses to engrave its name on strange destinies, on people considered anonymous specks of dust who inadvertently become a storm that sweeps away all the prejudices of their time. We often hear about the samurai spirit as a sacred and inviolable symbol of Japan, a closed world where honor and blood were the strongest walls. Yet, in the 16th century, amidst the bloody and chaotic warring states period, that strong wall was broken, not by a powerful invading army, nor by newly imported Western muskets, but by a lone man, a man with no Japanese blood, a man with skin as dark as night, a physique like a mountain, and the strength of a wounded beast. They called him Yasuke, from a slave stripped of both name and dignity, treated as a strange commodity from the distant Black Continent. He rose straight into the heart of Japanese power, standing alongside the most proud samurai and becoming a fearsome sword beside the demon king Oda Nobunaga. The story of Yasuke is not just a strange anecdote about the only black samurai in history. It is a tragic epic about the rise of human identity, about loyalty transcending racial boundaries, and about how a small individual could shake an ancient culture. Today, let's join us in shedding the dust of over 400 years of history to look into the eyes of that warrior, to see the profound loneliness, the dazzling glory, and the mysterious ending of a legend long forgotten. If you're ready to touch the scars of the past, leave a like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below, because every interaction you make is a flame that keeps these stories alive. The journey to obtain permission begins. Chapter 1. The ghost from the dark Sion Dynasty. Before becoming a legend with the sharp katana at his side, before donning the majestic armor of a samurai, Yasuke was merely a shadow, a life adrift in the raging waves of human greed. History, with its inherent cruelty, has not recorded his exact birth date, nor does it know where he first cried. Some accounts suggest he came from Mozambique, a land of long coastlines facing the vast Indian Ocean. Others believe the blood flowing in his veins originated from Ethiopia, the land of proud warriors. But wherever he came from, his fate in his early years was encapsulated in two cruel words: slavery. Let's close our eyes and imagine the world of the 16th century. It was an era when the sails of the Portuguese and Spaniards began to extend their tentacles across the oceans. They carried Bibles, guns, and iron chains. Peaceful villages in Africa were burned to the ground at night. Strong men were herded like cattle, stripped of their names, separated from their families and homelands. Yasuke, or whatever name he had before, was a victim of that bloody cycle. He was pushed onto cramped, foul-smelling wooden ships, where life and death were separated by a thin breath. In the suffocating darkness of the ship's hold, amidst the groans of his fellow men and the pungent smell of the sea, perhaps the young man had to learn to kill his innocent soul so that his body could survive. During his long voyages across the Indian Ocean, past the Cape of Good Hope, to Goa in India, and then continuing eastward, he was not considered a human being. In the eyes of Western merchants and clergy of the time, people like him were merely talking tools, muscular machines used for carrying loads, protection, or simply ostentatious displays of wealth. His extraordinary physical strength, his height far exceeding that of an average person, his dark ebony skin, none of these earned him respect, but only made him a more valuable commodity in bargaining. But fate always has strange arrangements. It was in the lowest rung of human society at that time that destiny brought him together with Alessandro Valignano, a powerful and ambitious Jesuit priest. Valignano was no ordinary merchant. He was entrusted with expanding the influence of Christ in the Far East. This priest needed a bodyguard, a strong and imposing attendant, and he chose this tall black man. This encounter was a fateful turning point, leading the nameless slave away from the familiar plantations and harbors on an unimaginable journey. A journey that would take him to an island at the edge of the world, where no black person had ever seen one, where social rules were forged as sharp as a sword, and where he would rise from the mud to become a name that would be remembered for millennia. The days spent at sea with the Jesuit mission were not merely days of service. It was a time when this man began to observe the world with a different perspective. Though still a slave, accompanying an important figure like Valignano gave him the opportunity to set foot in new lands and witness different cultures. He saw the scheming in the eyes of those in power, the devotion in the eyes of believers, and, most importantly, he began to sense a hidden strength dormant within himself. He possessed not only physical strength, but also extraordinary patience, keen observation, and a dignity that could not be broken by the whip. And then, the fateful ship docked. Before him stretched islands like a string of deep green pearls in the vast ocean. Japan, the land of samurai, of cherry blossoms, and of endless civil wars. As his bare feet touched the harbor's surface, he had no idea he had just stepped onto a grand chessboard. The air here had a completely different scent. The smell of sea breeze mingled with the smell of gunpowder and blood. The people at the harbor began pointing, eyes filled with astonishment. Fear and curiosity were fixed on him as if they were seeing a demon emerging from hell or a god descending from heaven. For the Japanese of that time, accustomed to small stature and yellow skin, The presence of a giant, nearly 1.9-meter tall black man was an indescribable cultural shock. It was at that very moment that the wheels of history began to turn, slowly but powerfully, preparing to crush the old rules and pave the way for the birth of a legend named Yasuke. The sea silk red leaving the familiar shores of Africa. The man continued his journey across the vast oceans, where the line between life and death was as thin as a hair. Under the patronage of Father Alessandro Valignano, he was no longer shackled as in the beginning. But the gaze of others never changed. He was a servant, a bodyguard, and in the eyes of many, a strange creature from the other world. The Jesuit ships traveled through India, across the Strait of Malacca, carrying the ambition to spread the Western faith to the mysterious lands of the East. For this black man, each port he passed was an eye-opener, but also a deeper realization of his own alienation. He did not belong to Europe. He had been uprooted from Africa, and now he was drifting to an unknown destination. But it was during those days at sea that his soul began to be tempered. He learned to observe the stillness of the ocean, to be patient in the face of fierce storms, and to learn the language and gestures of those around him, although no one taught him how to wield a sword or the social skills of the aristocracy. His survival instincts and innate intelligence allowed him to absorb everything like a sponge. He understood that to survive in this world of white and yellow people, brute strength alone was not enough. He needed a sharper weapon, the ability to understand people's hearts. And then, after long, arduous days, the Japanese horizon appeared, marking the end of a journey but the beginning of a legend. In 1579, the missionary group arrived in Japan, their final destination being the ancient capital of Kyoto. The arrival of Valignano was a major event, but the presence of the black bodyguard was the real earthquake. Imagine a centuries-old, closed Japanese society, accustomed to muted colors, suddenly confronted by a towering, imposing man with skin as black as coal and an aura of power emanating from every step. Rumors spread faster than the wind. People whispered about a great black god or a demon from hell. Thousands of Kyoto residents, from market vendors to wandering samurai, flocked to the streets just to catch a glimpse of him. The crowd's curiosity quickly turned into chaos. People pushed, shoved, and even trampled each other, causing many injuries and fatalities, all to satisfy their inquisitive gaze at the strange creature. Amidst this storm of noise and fear, the black man stood there, steadfast and silent. He showed neither fear nor anger. In his deep eyes, perhaps there was a lingering sadness of someone considered a monster, but also a hidden pride. He was aware of his difference, but instead of withdrawing, he accepted it as part of his fate. It was this strange calmness amidst the chaotic crowd that caught the attention of the most powerful, opening the door that led him to the man who would change his life forever. News of the Black Giant reached Oda Nobunaga, the ruthless yet innovative warlord who held supreme power in Japan at the time. Nobunaga, with his inquisitive and fearless nature, ordered the stranger summoned to an audience. The meeting took place in an atmosphere of extreme tension. When the black man entered the hall, all eyes of the retainers were fixed on him, their hands already on the hilts of their swords. Nobunaga stared at him, not with fear, but with suspicion. The warlord did not believe that such a naturally black skin color existed. He considered it ink, a Western hoax. A cruel and direct command was given: strip him naked and scrub his body. The black man obeyed without complaint. The servants used water and brushes to scrub his skin vigorously. But the more they scrubbed, the shinier and more radiant it became in the sunlight. No ink stain washed away, only the naked truth was revealed. At that moment, Nobunaga burst into laughter. His laughter shattered the atmosphere of suspicion. He realized this was not magic, but a masterpiece of creation. For the first time, the man was seen for who he truly was. Not a slave, not a monster, but a warrior possessing strength that even demons would envy. After the physical examination, Nobunaga did something unprecedented. He bestowed upon the slave a Japanese name, Yasuke, 2 short syllables, yet they carried immense weight. In receiving this name, he received not just a title, but a new life. The old name, the old slave status, died, giving way to Yasuke, a free man under the Oda clan. Nobunaga did not see him as a pet or a plaything. He saw in Yasuke the qualities of absolute loyalty, a man unbound by the complex political machinations of the Japanese clans. Yasuke was allowed free movement within the estate, provided with housing and food. This was a huge shock to the strict hierarchical system of feudal Japanese society. An outsider, without lineage or family background, was favored by the Supreme Lord. But Yasuke understood that this favor came with envious and jealous glances. He did not become complacent. On the contrary, he became even more humble and diligent. He understood that to maintain the name he had to prove his worth, not just with physical strength, but with his soul. Gaining freedom is one thing, but becoming part of the samurai class is a journey 1,000 times more arduous. Yasuke began a rigorous training process. He had to learn Japanese, not just the language of everyday communication, but the formal language of the warrior class. He had to learn how to walk, how to bow, how to enjoy tea, and most importantly, how to wield a sword. The katana is unlike the crude swords of the West or the spears of Africa. It demands finesse, a harmony between mind and spirit, between breath and strength. In the early days, his large, heavy hands clumsily handled the slender sword. But with an iron will, Yasuke practiced day and night. He practiced slashing at the air thousands of times a day until the sword became an extension of his arm. He studied Bushido, the way of the warrior, learning about loyalty, honor, and death as light as a feather. Gradually, people no longer saw a clumsy giant, but a composed warrior radiating a cold, ruthless aura whenever his hand touched the hilt of the sword. Yasuke not only learned Japanese martial arts, but he also let the Japanese spirit permeate his blood and flesh, blending with the wild blood of Africa to create a unique being. The historic moment had arrived. Nobunaga officially appointed Yasuke as a samurai, granting him his own sword and the right to wield two swords, the ultimate symbol of the warrior class. This was a shocking event, breaking centuries-old Japanese traditions. For the first time, a non-Japanese man, a man of color, was allowed to join the ranks of the most prestigious warriors. Some of Nobunaga's former retainers admired him, while others secretly opposed him, considering it an insult to tradition. But Nobunaga didn't care. He saw in Yasuke something that traditional samurai lacked: primal strength and unwavering loyalty. Yasuke became Nobunaga's swordsman, always by his side on every journey. The image of the powerful lord riding ahead, followed by the giant dark-skinned warrior, became a terror to any enemy. Yasuke was not just a bodyguard. He was a symbol of Oda Nobunaga's absolute power and forward-thinking mindset. Yasuke was brought to Azuchi Castle, the heart of Nobunaga's power, a magnificent and impregnable fortress of its time. There, he was more than just a guard. Rare historical records show that Nobunaga greatly enjoyed conversing with Yasuke. He was curious about the outside world, about Africa, about the oceans Yasuke had traveled. On moonlit nights, over cups of sake, the boundary between master and servant seemed to blur slightly. Yasuke became a companion, a listener to Nobunaga's ambitions of unifying the empire. Life at Azuchi showed Yasuke the pinnacle of Japanese culture and art, but also the loneliness of someone who stands above all others. He understood his master's feelings, and from that, his loyalty no longer stemmed solely from gratitude, but from profound understanding and respect. He vowed to use his life to protect the man who had given him a second chance at life. But the life of a samurai is not just about tea and conversation. The ultimate destination is the battlefield. In 1582, Yasuke participated in the Tenmokuzen campaign to exterminate the Takeda clan. This was his first time truly engaging in a large-scale Japanese-style war. The air was thick with the smell of blood and gunpowder. Shouts and the clash of metal echoed through the air. On the battlefield, Yasuke was like a beast unleashed. With his superior height and terrifying strength, each of his sword strokes was like a bolt of lightning striking his enemies. He didn't fight for glory. He fought to protect his lord and to assert his own authority. Enemies were terrified at the sight of him. Their morale halved before they could even engage in close combat. The campaign was successful, and the Takeda clan was annihilated. Yasuke returned in glory, his armor stained with the blood of his enemies. He proved to the entire Oda army that he was not a mere ornament, but a true warrior, a sharp sword capable of cutting through any obstacle in his master's path to national unification. Following the victory at Tenmokuzen, Nobunaga's power reached its peak. But as is often the case, the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. Rebellions began to brew in the shadows. Akechi Mitsuhide, one of Nobunaga's closest generals, began to harbor his own ambitions. The political atmosphere in Kyoto became stifling and tense. Yasuke, with the instincts of someone who had once lived on the brink of life and death, seemed to sense the unease in the air. He stayed by Nobunaga's side day and night, his sleep fitful, his hand never leaving the hilt of his sword. But history always takes cruel and unexpected turns. Nobunaga, overconfident in his power, took only a small retinue to rest at Hanoji Temple in Kyoto, including Yasuke. It was the terrifying calm before the storm, a false sense of peace concealing the blade at his throat. At dawn on June 21, 1582, fate dealt a fatal blow. The enemy is at Hanoji. The shouts of the rebel Akechi Mitsuhide tore through the quiet night. Thousands of soldiers surrounded the small temple. Yasuke awoke, gripping his sword tightly as he rushed out. The scene before him was a sea of fire and chaos. Arrows rained down, and screams echoed everywhere. Yasuke and his few remaining guards fought ferociously to stop the onslaught of enemy troops. He swung his sword, cutting down enemy after enemy, his black armor stained crimson with blood. But the enemy was too numerous. As one fell, another surged forward. Amidst the blazing inferno, Yasuke's dark figure stood as a last bastion, desperate yet resolute, desperately trying to buy even a few more moments for his master inside the burning temple. Oda Nobunaga knew his time was up. He was wounded, bleeding profusely. Yasuke retreated inside, kneeling beside his master. There were no tearful farewells, only a knowing glance and acceptance between the two men. Nobunaga ordered Yasuke not to die there. He He had to live to deliver the sword in his last wish to his eldest son, Oda Nobutada. Witnessing his master perform seppuku ritual suicide by disembowelment Wilmot amidst the flames was the greatest pain of Yasuke's life. The man who had given him everything now fell before his eyes, but Yasuke had no time to cry. He swallowed his tears, pushed aside his grief, grabbed his master's sword, and rushed out of the sea of fire. He wasn't running away out of cowardice. He was running for one final mission. Yasuke fought his way through the enemy lines to Neo Castle, where Nobunaga's son, Oda Nobutada, was stationed. His body was covered in wounds, his strength depleted, but his will burned brightly like the Honoji flame. Upon arriving, he delivered the devastating news and immediately joined Nobutada's defensive forces. Once again, Yasuke plunged into battle. The Battle of Neo Castle was even more brutal than Honoji. Yasuke fought like a man with nothing left to lose. He charged forward, roaring with grief and rage. It is said that in that final battle Yasuke killed dozens of Akechi's soldiers, but fate had decreed it. Nobutada's army was defeated, the young lord committed suicide, and Yasuke, exhausted and alone, was captured alive by the enemy. Yasuke was brought before Akechi Mitsuhide the traitor. He knelt there, head held high, awaiting a glorious death as a samurai, but Mitsuhide looked at him with contempt. He declared, "He is a beast, not a Japanese man. He knows nothing of honor, and therefore does not deserve to die as a samurai. Drive him away. Return him to the barbarians at the Namban temple." That judgment was more painful than death itself. Mitsuhide stripped Yasuke of the samurai honor he had painstakingly cultivated. Denying his existence in the flow of Japanese history, he wasn't killed, but thrown back into the shadows, stripped of his sword and his status. Yasuke was handed over to the Jesuit priests, surviving but carrying an unhealing emotional wound. Was this survival a humiliation, or a blessing of fate allowing him to continue bearing witness to history? That is a question that will forever remain unanswered. After the events of 1582, the name Yasuke completely disappeared from official historical records. No one knew where he went, what he did, or how he died. Some say he returned to Africa. Others say he lived in seclusion in a small village in Japan, carrying with him the memories of his glorious golden age. He arrived like a storm and departed like a wisp of smoke, leaving behind a great question mark for posterity. But even though his body has turned to dust, Yasuke's story lives on. He is a powerful testament to breaking down racial and cultural barriers. He teaches us that loyalty and honor do not depend on skin color or origin. In the endless flow of Japanese samurai history, amidst thousands of illustrious samurai names, the figure of that black warrior stands there, tall and proud, reminding the world of an era when a slave rose to reach the stars. Yasuke's story ends, but its echoes resonate. From an anonymous slave to the right-hand man of Japan's most powerful man, Yasuke's life is a tragic epic of human resilience and dignity. History may have forgotten him in its dusty pages, but we, the people of today's generation, will rekindle that flame. Thank you for joining us on this long and emotional journey. We hope Yasuke's story has planted a seed of faith and strength in your heart. If you find this video meaningful, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to spread these humanistic values to even more people. Every follow is a drop of water, contributing to the great river of compassion. Goodbye, and see you again on our next historical exploration journeys. Yasuke's story concludes not with a majestic tomb, nor with meticulous historical records, but with an haunting silence. He arrived like a strange wind from the ocean, stirring up an entire dynasty, then vanished into thin air as if he had never existed. But it is precisely this incompleteness of history that creates his immortal beauty. Yasuke was not just a samurai. He is a symbol of the yearning for freedom, of the boundless potential of humanity to overcome adversity and prejudice. Each of us, in our own lives, sometimes feels lost and alone like Yasuke in the heart of Japan. But remember, it is precisely that difference, that pain, that forges the character of a warrior. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey back in time. If Yasuke's story touches your heart, please leave a follow. Each follow is a drop of water contributing to the great river of compassion. Goodbye, and see you again in the next glorious chapters of history.